Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are joining us from. To all of our live participants out there in the virtual train world, thank you for joining us tonight on Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim. For those of you that are following up on our YouTube channel, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you here, whether virtually live or on the pre-recorded version of tonight's broadcast. I want to thank you all for joining us on Train Tuesday. We've got some great things to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking about HO and N scale freight cars, both from Roundhouse as well as Athearn. And we'll be taking your questions towards the end of the broadcast. But let's do what we always do. Let's see who is joining us tonight. I've got Leonard Skinner. That's a first for me. Neat to have such a iconic band joining us tonight. Anthony, Derek Glass is in the house. Split Rock, Rusty, Andrew, Eric, Tim. Are you a train man too? We have Eugene, Delta, Dale, Anthony, Cornell Custom Trains, and Anessa. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Like I said, we're going to be talking a little bit about Athearn, a little bit about Roundhouse, a little bit about HO scale, as well as N scale, and a little bit about a car that has been newly designed, recently updated. Some neat features we're going to talk about tonight. Now, one more time, we'll turn to our live feed to see who's joining us as new folks enter the room. We have Andrew, Tim, Eugene, Ian, Donnie, Real Fantastic, Ozzy, Donnie, Jeff, Bradley, Bruce, Eric, CJ, George, Taylor, Jackson, and John, just to name a few. Quite a few guys here tonight joining us on this special Train Tuesday. Just got back from the NMRA National Train Show. Still trying to catch up on some sleep. It was a pleasure to meet some of you in person. It's always good to put a name to the face, or a face to the name, as it is. Great time was had by all. A lot of great stuff that reminds us constantly why it's a great time to be in this wonderful hobby. So it was a pleasure meeting some of you folks. Look forward to seeing more of you again. Our next train show is going to be Milwaukee at the Milwaukee Train Fest coming up in November. So stay tuned for further details on that. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's do what we always do. Let's go ahead and get comfortable in our workshop chair, put down the hobby knife, and grab the beverage of your choice. And let's get started with Train Tuesday. So we're going to be talking box cars for our first round of items. And these are by the Athearn line. Now, these are available in both HO and N. A little background on the NACC 50-foot box cars. The 1960s was a period of development that would set the course of railroading as we see it today. The North American Car Corporation, NACC, designed and built a 50-foot outside post insulated plug door boxcar, which proved to be a vision of developments to come. Several railroads rostered this car, with most of them either purchased, by, or leased to a private shipper. The NACC cars were frequently decorated in complex, colorful paint schemes, which we'll see today. And when the NACC cars were built, general leasing, billboard paint schemes, and modern freight handling techniques were still at least a decade in the future. So we're going to be showing you some cars that will fit the bill if you're an HO or N scale modeler that are in the 60s and 70s. And we'll talk about the features of these cars towards the end. But let's take a look at the cars that we're offering this run. Now, once again, we are offering these for pre-order. You have until Friday, August 26th to place your pre-orders with your preferred dealer. First one up is this Delaware and Hudson 28033. This is a 1970s onward paint scheme. Now, this is an interesting time for the D&H 1970s. That's because in 1964, Norfolk and Western wanted the Wabash and nickel plate roads. The ICC at the time informed them to get to those two roads, they would also have to take the Erie-Lackawanna and the D&H. Now, the D&H company was reorganized as the Delaware and Hudson Railway, and both roads were placed into Derico, a holding company owned by Norfolk and Western Railway. Now, after New York and Pennsylvania were hit by Hurricane Agnes in 1972, it subsequently destroyed part of the EL main line west of Binghamton, and following the bankruptcy of numerous northeastern U.S. railroads in the 1970s, including, of course, the D&H and the E&L. Norfolk and Western lost control of Jericho stock. After several merger plans fell through, the EL petitioned for and was included in the formation of Conrail. While D&H was technically still owned by the Norfolk and Western, they were given financial support and told to sink or swim as an independent railroad once again. They would stay independent until Guilford in 1984. Subsequently, they were furthermore purchased by Canadian Pacific. But this 1970s era shows a little bit of independence, and this car here would be perfectly fine under HO or N scale layout or module if you were running the 1970s. Now, we're offering this car in 3 different road numbers, so you have a chance to build your fleet. So coming up next, we have this rather interesting car. This is Ham's Brewing Company, road number 31214, and this is a mid-1960s paint scheme. Pretty obvious by the looks of this billboard box car, as you see here. This is from the land of sky blue waters. That was their jingle back then. The Theodore Ham's Brewing Company was an American brewing company established in 1865 in St. Paul, Minnesota, becoming the 5th largest brewery in the United States. Ham's expanded with additional breweries that were acquired in other cities, including San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, and Baltimore, just to name a few. Now, once again, these are available in 3 different road numbers in both HO and N scale. Coming up next, here's one that we've actually offered in the past. And again, if you are somebody that is running in the 1960s and in both HO and N, you're going to want this car. This is road number 42977. Magcobar, a division of Dresser Industries, is an oil field services company which provides a substantial amount of drilling fluids to the oil industry. Much of this arrives in the form of dry drilling mud, which is shipped in sacks in the Magcobar's fleet of leased RBL's insulated boxcars. These colorful cars wore NIRX or USLX reporting marks and frequented the Gulf Coast on the SP from Houston to New Orleans. Now, you can read more about this. Do a Google search if you're fascinated with the history of this, not only this company, but the boxcars like you see here. The Dresser Magcobar NIRX USLX freight cars page. Just do a Google for that. And there's some really interesting information on there. That's where this information was derived from. Coming up next is the Alumax. Again, 1966 onward. Once was the 3rd largest domestic producer of aluminum product. They were acquired by Alcoa in 1998. Perfect for your HO or N scale module or layout with many industrial districts, if you will, that would use such a commodity. For our fans on the Northeast, we have the Central of New Jersey 40122, again, available in 2 other additional road numbers. This is a 1964 paint scheme. Also, a kind of a really interesting time period for Central of New Jersey. The merger between the Chesapeake and Ohio and Norfolk and Western Railways that was proposed in 1965 to counter the impending PRR New York Central Railroad merger was to have included the CNJ, but the bankruptcy of Penn Central killed that prospect. CNJ drafted elaborate plans for reorganization, and they all came to naught as neighboring railroads collapsed. Conrail took over freight operations of CNJ on April 1st, 1976, with the passenger routes transferred to the New Jersey Department of Transportation, including the present New Jersey Transit North Jersey Coast Line and the Raritan Valley Line. And then last but not least, these are again available in HO and N scale, available in 3 different road numbers. Here's one you might not have seen before. This is Penguin Ginger Ale, number 7001. This is a 1960s paint scheme towards the end of this company's lifespan. Their jingle was as refreshing as an Arctic breeze. Penguin Ginger Ale, produced by Penguin Beverages, Inc. of Long Beach, California, started brewing cola and ginger ale in 1936. By the 1960s, Penguin Beverages owned a small fleet of the NACC Box Cars, and they could be seen throughout the lower Southwest as far as Nevada. Penguin Beverage was subsequently purchased by longtime California rival Hanson's in 1971. Now, this is actually part of our legendary liveries. I hope you enjoyed my fictional history. That's not quite true, but if you want to have some fun with the guys at the operating session that you plan on having with these cars later, you can definitely use that little history that I made up, or fictional history. But just something we wanted to add. It definitely has a 1960s feel to it. The artwork is definitely indicative to mid-century modern. And again, available both in HO and N scale. Now, on the HO scale side, these available as singles. These are the suggested retail prices. These are not the prices that you may buy these at, but this will give you an idea what the retail price is. For the HO scale versions, they are $37.99 each, and for the N scale versions, they are $31.99. Now, let's talk about the HO scale features briefly. All of these are going to have, on the HO scale models, applied metal grab irons and etched end platforms. They will include a Pullman standard or a superior plug door based on their prototype. Pullman standard or Stanray superior roof, again matched to the prototype. All of them will have ready-to-roll 70-ton trucks, machined 33-inch metal wheels with RP25 contours, and of course body-mounted McHenry operating scale knuckle couplers. These will run on a minimum radius of 18 inches. For the N scale, you're not going to be left out as far as details. Each one of these, an N scale, will include etched metal stirrup steps, detailed molded underframe. It too will include Pullman standard or superior plug doors, Pullman standard or Stanray superior roof, again matched to the prototype, 70-ton trucks, machined 33-inch metal wheels, and body-mounted McHenry couplers. That is essential with the N-scale cars of this type, especially since you might use these in operations. And your minimum radius on these is 9 3/4. So they'll operate on just about any type of sectional or flex track, as long as the radius doesn't go below 9 3/4. So pretty cool selection that we have. Before we go into the next set of cars, let's go into the comments briefly, see if anybody's got any questions on these. Haven't seen those yet. Now, depending on where you get your social media, we're blasting social media with these cars. You can also see them on our website under new announcements. Let's see, what else do we have? Randall says that Penguin car looks awesome. Yeah, I got to agree. I got to hand it to our artist at Athearn. They've definitely they definitely nailed that. If you didn't know better, you would probably think that really was the real deal. There you go, Split Rock. I couldn't agree with you more. All right. A lot of folks are seriously wanting to get those. There you go, Derek. It's a little bit earlier than what you normally model, but I can see you picking up a few of those. Ian, thank you. We haven't done a DNH car in a little bit. We figured it was time to get some DNH and CNJ cars out again. All right. Last question, is that a New York Central green? No, it is not. I think it's a green that our artist kind of made up. Not based on any real car. It's a real car, but the paint scheme is completely fictional. It's part of our legendary liveries. Now we're going to stay on the theme of box cars. We're going to go a little bit further forward in history. And we're going to talk about the FMC 5077 centered double door box cars. Now, a little bit of history on not the car itself, but the model that we're showing here. At first glance, you might think, well, these are just the old MDC cars. Well, you would be wrong. They are not. The older MDC cars that we offered in the past, they were not the right proportions. These are newly retooled, and subsequently, all of our FMC cars will be retooled. So they are not old MDC tooling cars. They were dimensionally way too wide. These new FMC box cars are correctly scaled and matched to actual prototypes. These cars have also been updated with separately applied metal grab irons, separate stirrups, brake and airline details, and a metal etched crossover platform. So with all of these updates, these are basically a new car. We're not calling them a new car, but with all the updates that we've done to them, the dimensional being the biggest change and some of those details added, they have nothing remotely similar to the former MDC cars of days past. These are completely different. The first one that we've got here is Southern Pacific 246021. It's based on a 1970s, late 1970s, I add, paint scheme. And these are going to have 3 road numbers per road. So you can get 3 different road numbers with your Southern Pacific. These are going to retail at $39.99 each. For you Chessie fans, we had to do the Chessie. This is a 1981 on up paint scheme. So we've got some 70s, we've got some 80s in here for you guys modeling that era. And coming up next is the Western Pacific. This is a late 1970s paint scheme, probably one of the last orders of box cars that would wear this paint scheme. Wouldn't be too far after this that this would come under a coat of armor yellow. Coming up next, the per diem era, as we've talked about in the past. A lot of short lines received these cars, and additionally, they got some really neat paint schemes. The Longview, Portland, and Northern, this one here is indicative of a car from the late 70s. This is a historic railroad operation in the United States of Oregon and Washington. It was founded by timber baron Robert A. Long, the founder of Longview, Washington. The company was incorporated in 1922. Now, beginning in 1954, the LP&N operated a 3-mile-long short line railroad on the Oregon coast that connected the International Paper Plant to the Southern Pacific Interchange just outside Gardner, Oregon. Now, the plant was shut down in 1999 and unfortunately was razed. All that remains of the plant is the railroad tracks and shop buildings. But in the 1970s, you can imagine what these cars were being put to use for. We're offering this, and again, we're offering these in 3 different road numbers per road. This is the White City Terminal, number 102049. This is a 1990s paint scheme. The WCTU Railway, LLC, was a 13-mile short-line railroad that connects White City, Oregon, the United States, to a junction north of Medford with the Central Oregon and Pacific Railroad, which hauls its cars to the Union Pacific Railroad at Eugene. On December 17, 2012, Marmon Transportation announced the sale of the WCTU Railway to RVTR Rail Holdings, now CCT Rail System Corporation. The railway is known as the Rogue Valley Terminal Railroad Corporation. Pretty interesting. Do a quick search on Google after the show, and there's some pretty interesting stuff. And if you're somebody that is looking for a unique short line to model, this may fit the bill. This is the Amador Central, number 1016. This is also a late 1990s paint scheme. The Amador Central Railroad, reporting mark AMC, was a standard gauge railroad that operated 11.8 miles between a connection with the Southern Pacific Company at Ione and Martel near the town of Jackson, California. The carrier served the Sierra Nevada foothills gold mining communities and hauled lumber products from El Dorado, national forest. Amador is the name of the county in which the railroad operated. Now, the railroad itself is gone, unfortunately, but it has been saved. Portions of it have been saved. Again, do a search on your favorite search engine tonight. You'll see that there's a team of folks that have saved a portion of the line, and they use it for their track speeders and other railroad events. Well, kind of a neat little railroad. Talking about the features now of these cars, these are going to have some great details. Again, these are Athearn HO cars, and they're going to have separately applied grab irons, end ladders, and brake wheel. The photo etch crossover platform. All of them will include 33-inch metal machined wheels with RP25 contours. Of course, body-mounted McHenry operating scale knuckle couplers. And they will operate on a minimum radius of 18 inches. So for you guys that are, oh no, we've got the mysterious Microsoft challenge again. Let's see how far back we lost that. I apologize. Microsoft strikes again. All right, let's try that again. Okay. So there we go. Sorry, Ronald, I have no control over what does that. So I apologize. Here it is. And let me show you the Amador car as well. Okay. All right. So at this point, let's see if there's any questions about these newer FMC box cars. Again, these are not going to be based on the old MDC cars. I see other questions out there. Train Jack 16. We'll talk about that later. Save your question for the end of the show. This is for the FMCs. So any questions on the FMCs? Guys that are modeling the 70s into the 80s, let us know any questions you may have. As far as my researchers tell me, that is a real car, no Fubi. If it's a Fubi, we'll generally say legendary liveries. Andrew Garcia, any Ferromix? Not in this run. If you'd like to see some Ferromix FMCs, be sure to go to our email that goes right to our developers, and that is Athearn-product suggestions at athearn.com. Not the FMCs. The previous NACC cars are available in N. These are HO only. I want to get this, Ricky. Do these MDCs have freestanding grabs? These are not MDC. Please realize that even though in the past we offered these cars with MDC tooling, they were not fit for modern railroading. Dimensions were way off. These are essentially new tooling. So these are accurately, in fact, they're probably the most accurate 5077 FMC cars on the HO scale market. To answer your questioning, is it going to have freestanding grabs? Yeah, they're separately applied. They're separately applied detail. They are not molded in. Tate, thank you. That's what we're doing. We've got a staff of developers, and that's what they do. They go through and see what they can update, because we know demands of model railroaders get more and more demanding. We want to keep up with those trends. All right. We're going to go take a momentary break while I look for more questions. We've got just one more thing we're going to talk about tonight, and that is Roundhouse. Now, the Roundhouse cars are actually, I'm sorry, these are Athearn. These are Athearn stock cars. We haven't run these in a while. And also, there's a few little refinements to these. So like I said, it's been a little bit since we've offered these, but we'll talk about the features of these too. Now these are 1940s, 1950s. I'll let you know what year as we go in, but here we've got Santa Fe car number 25140. This is a 1940s 40-foot stock car. These are going to be available as singles and 2 different road numbers, as well as a 4-car pack. Now, of course, the 4-car pack is going to feature road numbers that are not available separately. So you have the ability to pick up 6 different road numbers for the same railroad with this. It looks like we're going to have to, not sure why Microsoft is messing with us so much tonight, but it is. Next is the Chicago Northwestern. This is a 1940s paint car, and for prices, single car, if you're wondering, this is retail, of course. You need to contact your dealer. $34.99. The 4-pack is $121.99. But again, contact your dealer. What we're telling you for price is retail. Since we are the manufacturer, we're not going to compete with your local hobby dealer. We're going to show you the retail price. Again, 1940s era car. Up next, we've got the Rio Grande. This is a 1950s car. This is one of the newer cars in the fleet. Great Northern. We're going back to the 1940s with this car. And then Missouri Pacific. Now, this isn't just Missouri Pacific. It's actually Texas and Pacific. This is car number 24020, and it's a 1940s paint scheme. So some of the features on these cars, just to briefly mention, they have separately applied brake wheels, underbody with brake system details. So they're nicely detailed cars. The 4-packs will include a unique road number for building longer trains. We already mentioned that earlier. So remember, you've got the 2 singles with 2 separate road numbers, and then you've got the 4-pack with 4 additional road numbers, not the same as the singles. So you can build a much bigger train very easily. All of these, of course, are going to have metal wheel sets with RP25 contours, and the minimum radius on these is 18 inches. So if you're still doing the steam era into even into the transition era, you can justify purchasing a few of these cars. So briefly, we'll do some questions on these cars, and then we'll roll into some other questions for Athearn in general before closing out the program. Now, I do see some comments out there about price. One of the things I want to say is Athearn is not alone in the pricing. Inflation will impact all of us, whether it be model freight cars, model locomotives, even the price of bread and gasoline. That's just the nature of everything, not just the hobby. So these prices are based again on retail. So contact your dealer, because that price the dealer gives you may not be the same price as what we're advertising. As a manufacturer, once again, we will show the retail price, suggested retail price. But contact your dealer for those prices. Everything is priced accordingly. So let me see what kind of questions we've got. Donnie's liking the stock cars. Thank you, Donnie. Yeah, they're kind of neat. Certainly something that we don't see anymore. Any chance for Southern Box Cars? Well, not in this round, but if you go to that email address that I keep telling you about, that's our new product suggestions email. It's very possible that you might see those in the future. BN Green 1970 says, I can't have enough of those 70s and early 80s per diem box cars. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting time in railroading history. Brad's coming in with a comment saying, more all new freight car models, please. My vote is for the NSC 60-foot high cube double door box car. And then he lists some others. Brad, I want you to pay attention. The FMCs that we just talked about a few minutes ago, they may not be all new. We're certainly not advertising them as all new, but they have so many new features, and they are also the most prototypical HO scale FMC 5077 box cars. Certainly, we haven't offered something like that in the past. As far as your other comments and questions about new freight cars, you're more than welcome to go to Athearn product suggestions at athearn.com and submit those. If you and your friends comment on that when a development slot opens up, you may be happy to see in an announcement video that we are going to do one of those freight cars that you're looking for. All right. Late Night wants to know, are the shells removable easily if someone wants to put little livestock inside? They actually are. A little bit of care needs to be taken, but they definitely can be set up that way. So that now you've got me interested in what you're going to do in one of your next videos once these come out. All right, let's go ahead and finish up with one or two more questions, and we will end this program for tonight. Yes, Brad, your needs might be somebody else's needs. Remember, we try to produce models for everyone, not just one single person. Zach wants to know, any Maine Central Harvest Gold FMCs? No, not in this run. You're taxing my memory. It's been a little bit since I've looked at my Maine Central books, but I don't remember too much from that era of Maine Central. So you'll have to put in any suggestions into the product suggestion email. All right, I've got time for one more question. And then I will let you go back to it. Yes, we'll end with Dale's question because it's very appropriate for what happened at the show this past weekend. Update on Amtrak Surfliners. Okay, so this past weekend we had the National Train Show in Collinsville, Illinois. And on Saturday, we were able to get in what we call the first shots of both the Surfliners and the California cars. Now, these were just the shells. If you look social media, and we'll be posting some pictures later of these, folks that were in attendance could see the amount of work that's been put into these molds. Again, these are the first shots. Development's already working further down the road. Now, there have been some delays. Those delays have caused us to back up the date a little bit. We originally wanted to have these out by summer, but we want to refine these to the point where we don't have to worry about any issues for the user. We want to make these user-friendly cars, and so there's some updates that we've done to them that we'll talk about later. But we're looking to have those to your hobby shops about the 1st of 2023, so about January. All right. Plenty of other questions asking when other items are going to be in stock. What you can do is you can go to our website at athearn.com. We try to keep the ETA pretty consistent with what we see in our shipping. Please do keep in mind, though, those ETAs are just that, estimated. That can change due to the many shipping delays that we're seeing all over the world. If there are delays, we will update those dates. But until then, watch our website. We'll also post pictures of the actual product as they actually get closer to being here. So that'll give you an idea too. Don't forget in September, the GP40-2s, the SD60Ms, and the F7As will be at your hobby dealer. If you pre-ordered those, you'll probably be getting a phone call soon. I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight. And like always, I want you to go out there, do some good modeling, stay healthy, be safe, and above all, high greens. Until next time, folks, take care. Good night.